Hey, this tutorial series will all be about proper modeling and all the steps I would suggest for good results. The first part of the series will be about creating a nose. The reason I am doing it about a nose is because it is very organic, but it has very defining outlines of the shape, so it will be easy to understand if you see me model on it. And it has very defining edge loops, so I can really explain what they do and how to create the proper flow of the mesh. Alright, so at the first step we're going to do the planning. It's a very important step, though it's one that's not used very often. The reason for planning you will see later on in further detail, but the biggest reason in planning is to prevent mistakes and having to over-engineer. So, first of all, what we want to do is create the outline. So here's one of the outlines, and here is one of the outlines. So you're basically going to look where the sharpest areas are. Then there's this outline, like this, and then there's also, it's not a really sharp corner, but it is a corner you have to keep track of while modeling. Then there's also this, also a pretty smooth one. Alright, so now to get the flow. Flow is really important to get, one, to get all quads, and two, to make sure that you have full control over all the corners, edges, and to not confuse the subdivision modifier. So to create the flow you're mostly going to look at where are the outlines and where should edge loops go to be able to control things. So the flow will go sure around this because you want this to go up and you want to have control over this edge. So also on this side, but I'm not going to draw that right now. And then you also have this. Actually, I will draw that just quickly. Okay, so these are the ones you really need to be able to get a good flow on this part. And one thing I forgot with the outlines, you always also have to think of the shapes of the top of the nostrils, which here are the rounded corners. You can't really see it that well on the image, so you just have to kind of guess. Alright, so the flow on this basically goes around here. And the reason why you don't have it something like this is if you would pull this out, this part would still stay in its position. So then you're just going to create this. But what you want is this kind of shape. So that's why this wouldn't be a good idea, because you pull this out instead of this line pulling it out. So that's why you're going to do it like this. Later on in the geometry you'll see that this flow will go further on following that. Okay, and now more obvious ones. Well, I'm not doing it very clean, but it doesn't have to be, as long as it's visible what you're trying to do. Because this is all just a guideline, nothing here is going to be the exact same. So now the geometry. Geometry is a bit of a harder part. Well, you want to make sure that like the most you can get would be quad, and you have to think, how can I keep the flow well? So you first want to go around this, like around the flow, then later on you'll add faces, but then comes the harder part, is connecting the two. Because, well, how would you do this? Because you have a three-way. One way to do this, it's a pretty easy way. So you basically go this way and further on this way, So when you see this, it's like, oh no, that's a triangle, that's not a good thing, but you can create this out of this, so you can go further in the flow like that. Like this is, here it's getting a bit hard to draw, but you'll get the point. So you can create a few flow lines, but in this case it might actually be better to have this a bit bigger, so it's better evenly distributed. So now basically what you can also do is get these, and now you have a tri. Well, that's not what you want, but the thing with quads is they don't have to be a square. Like if you have if you have this, well, it's a triangle, but it's about the amount of vertices. So if you have this, basically the only thing you can have to do to make it a square is basically move it this way. So it is always a quad, not a square. So like this, you still have a quad there, and then you can fill up the geometry. But then be careful with this part, because this will connect with this. So over to this part. So you're going to have this, but like all the faces that will be around this have to come to the middle, and you can't just make that a full n-gon, because of course Subdivision Surface really hates n-gons. So you're going to have to think, how many faces will I need on the sides to make the best shape, which is also evenly distributed. So in the best case scenario, like if you have this, the best thing you can do, because you want to pull this away, so the best thing to do that is to create basically a cross, because it lets you easily move this outwards, and this will all stay, this whole outline. And because the way Subdivision Surface works, it will just work perfectly. So you also have to make sure there's vertices here. Like yes, this is a bit round, but yeah, if you would do it perfectly, then it would be like this. But Subdivision Surface will make it like this. Alright. So if you have counted it, like you have here a face, here a face, here a face, here, 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 and then here too. So you have 6 faces, at least miscounting bottom, because that will be connected to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you're going to have to make faces around this. So right now you have 3, now you'll have 4, and now you'll have 6. And now just make the cross in the middle, and boom, you have the shape you would need for it. And then, because you didn't do this part yet, now you can easily put these in between. Make sure that the distance between these two isn't much bigger than the distance between these two, and basically everywhere. Try to distribute them evenly, so that there won't be sharper parts and smoother parts, because because Subdivision Surface, how it works, is if you have a point here and point here, it will make it pretty sharp, because if there's 3 points, it'll try to create a smooth curve between them. But if there's parts where it's really close to each other, then it will happen like this. But if there's parts that are this far away from each other, as you can see, that would be way smoother. So if you don't have it evenly distributed, there will be parts that will be sharper than others, and you want it to kind of be smooth. Like, it doesn't have to be perfectly the same size, but try to do it similar sizes. And now you can just basically fill this all up. Alright, and then the easiest part is, because now that you have laid all this out, you can just basically extrude it upwards and just create geometry in it. Like this part isn't challenging. So now from here you can just move it upwards with faces like this. Yeah, I put these too far apart, so something like this, and you could put more here. Now this is only a guideline, so the planning was only mostly important for this part and this part. So now that you've got that in your head or an image stored, then you can go model it, and it will be way easier. You won't have as much problems, and you don't have to over-engineer things that will usually create worse results. So here you got it for this part of the video. The next part will most likely come soon, and in that I'll show you how I would go by modeling this.